ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 1 of the series. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Mustafa City. Izuku Midoriya, a teen with green hair on his head and green eyes. The guy is wearing normal school clothes as he walks into a tunnel that will lead him to home. He seems to be a bit on the short side, with a bit of a weak body and several self-confidence, a bit suicidal and depression emotional state. Why is that? Well, let's just give you guys a brief introduction of his world. You see, a few centuries ago, the world exploded with quirks. What are quirks? That is a good question. Quirks are genetic mutation that occurs in the human that provides them with several abilities that could be shown as superpowers, and the people with quirks tends to have the dream of becoming superhero. The stronger the quirk is, the more powerful and famous you become, and then the government changed the superheroes from vigilante to a paying job. Slowly the world was taken over by the quirks, with more than 80% of the world now had quirks, and the rest were called quirkless. In layman terms, the outcasts of the society. The quirkless in this society are treated worse than villains, with the bullying, the look of pity, and many considering the quirkless to be useless who can't do a thing. Izuku Midoriya falls under the category of the quirkless. He still remembers the day that he found out that he was quirkless, and how the conversation after that with his mother that broke the heart of both him and his mother's. I am so sorry, Izuku. The scene shows a chibi Izuku sitting in front of the screen of the computer as both him and his mother's shed tears of anguish and sorrow with how the doctors dashed his dreams and hopes. Truthfully, he can't blame his mother, considering that he is the only child of his parents, keeping in mind the fact that his father is overseas for his job and try to make out as much time as possible for his family. But he still hoped for more time with his father. Both his mother and father still love each other, but he still resented the fact that he doesn't get as much time as he wants with his father. Well, he could get it if his father's boss wasn't such a trash and would allow him a transfer near their home. But what do you know? The world loves to make his life miserable. It is enough to know that his father still loves him, and he will be coming back home in few months to meet him and his mother for vacation. At least something was good. Now, other reason was that his childhood friend Bakugo Katsumi, or Kachin, who became his bully, loves to make his life miserable, just because he is quirkless and wants to become a hero by going to UA, the Hero Academy. She has always been a bit egotistical, and he is using the word bit loosely, and according to her, he is a Deku, or someone useless. But recently, she had been much more cruel and angry. Izuku grimaced as he remembers what Kachin spoke just before they left the school. Why don't you just swan dive off the roof and hope that you get a powerful quirk in the next life? Bakugo Katsumi spoke with a serious expression, but he was sure that there was something else behind that expression. Stupid Kachin, Izuku mumbles as he kicked a pebble. Doesn't she know that she could lose her chance to go to UA if I followed his advice? There would be an investigation if I did that, and I can't do that to either mom and dad or her. They still love me. Well, maybe not her. But Izuku knew that in the corner of his mind, a little voice told him to follow that advice, that nobody loves him, that nobody cares for him. Izuku ignores the voice again as he went deeper into the tunnel, not noticing the manhole of a sewer shutter as he walked right over it. There was a moment when everything was calm, and then everything happened in slow motion as the something started coming out from the cover of the sewer, and giant sludge creature came out of the sewer with 2 giant circle-like eyes and a mouth to speak, making the creature look like a giant sludge monster, which was uglier and more smelly than the mook. A medium-sized skin suit. The weird sludge spoke in a masculine voice as he looked at Izuku, who had a terrified expression on his face. This would work just fine. He quickly dived to run away from the creature, but a slimy tendril shot itself out of the sludge to grab him. But to its and Izuku's surprise, he jumped out of the way, dodging the tendril that was shot at him. At least there is something I gained by constantly running away from her, Izuku thought as he looked at the surprised look that was on the disfigured face of the sludge. You have some good reflexes, the sludge complimented him, and Izuku felt a bit weird being complimented by a villain, but you can't dodge forever. With that, the sludge shot several tendrils at once, and Izuku was able to dodge few of them at once as Izuku tried to run away, but after dodging few, a tendril got hold of his right leg, making him drop on the ground with a yelp. "Looks like your luck ran out, kid." The sludge spoke as it then brought it back in the dark as Izuku tried to get away as the sludge covered him. He was thrashing inside the slimy liquid, clawing at it, trying his best to escape from it. "Stop fighting it, kid. It will good for both you and me, as I need your body before he comes here. It will be over in a minute," the sludge creature stated, but Izuku was too busy trying his best to get out of the creature, praying for someone to save him. "Is this how I die?" Izuku thought as the sludge started to suffocate him. Is this how it ends for me?" His eyes started to get heavy as he kept on losing air. "But I wanted to be a hero," he thought again, as flash of small kid with green hair and freckles on his cheeks came into his mind as he watches the screen where it showed the number 1 hero, All Might, saving civilians from a burning building. "I wanted to be just like him. He brought some people with a huge smile on his face. I wanted to save people with a smile." Another scene passed where it shows 2 adults, one female with green hair and another a male with black hair, both smiling down at the kid with green hair as he jumps around with an All Might figure in his hand. "I wanted them to be proud of me." Another scene shows with 2 kids, one familiar boy with green hair and a blonde girl with red eyes are shown playing together with smile on their faces. "I wanted to get my friend back." He finally closed his eyes with darkness surrounding it. But as he was closing his eyes, he was sure that he heard a voice in the dark. "You are pathetic." The voice spoke in the dark as a giant red slitted eye suddenly opened in the darkness. For the sludge creature, everything was going good except for the part where he was on time limit and taking over the body before the hero with the truth, justice, and Japanese way could come. He just want to use this body to get out of here. As he started to take over, he suddenly felt something foul, something much more dangerous than the person he was running from. He felt a presence that could destroy him. A presence that was telling him to get away from the kid that was right now inside him, a feeling that made him freeze in fear, and in his fear, he didn't notice as another manhole erupted. He had a brief terror pass through him as his hold over the kid loosened, and it was sure not because of the person that was coming from the sewer. Behind the sludge creature, a big bulky arm rose from the sewer, through which the sludge monster came as the manhole cover flew up, and soon a body jumped out showing a big bulky guy with a blonde hair with 2 of bangs that stood up to make a V sign, a giant smile, which nearly faltered because of the scene in front of him. He saw a kid that was being taken over by the sludge that he had been following for the past hour. He was almost at his limit. He was ready to get the kid out of safety when a feeling of utter terror washed over him, a feeling that he didn't feel when he fought his enemies. Nobody has made him feel such terror, not even the man that once ruled the criminal empire of Japan, a man that is responsible for several deaths, including his sensei. A feeling that if he wasn't the strongest hero in Japan with indomitable will, he would have ran away and not looked back. But there was someone that was waiting for him, someone who wants to be saved from the villain in this feeling. This sludge villain turned out to be a lot more dangerous if he was able to make him feel this terror. He then noticed that the grip of sludge on the young child was slipping, which made him get ready to use his move to save him, but he stopped when the child opened his eyes. The pair of eyes that were shown was very unique, with white sclera, dark red in color with black slits, and didn't match a bit with the kid appearance of green hair and normal-looking appearance. Maybe it's a quirk, All Might thought as he looked in the eyes, but that wasn't what stopped him. What stopped him was the feeling that looking into the eyes made him feel. Fear, that was the feeling looking in those eyes made him feel. What is his quirk that could make me feel such terror? All Might thought as he looked into the eyes. But his attention then turned back to the villain and found an opening that he needed to subdue that villain. "Fear not, young man," All Might started as he got in the position of giving a punch, but when he said that, he got the feeling that it was not the kid that needed the saving, but it was actually the opposite, but he went with it for "I am here." With that, he began charging up his punch as both the sludge monster and the young man turned to look at him. "Texas," All Might said as he threw a punch towards the sludge monster, and the kid smash. With that, a huge shockwave came from the punch, threw both the young man and the monster away from each other. But the eyes of the child were still able to unnerve him even as the kid closed his eyes and fainted on the spot he had fallen to. What was that? All Might thought as he looked at the fallen kid, who looked very peaceful. Maybe that was just my mind playing games. Let's take care of the villain first. All Might thought as bent down and picked up an empty soda bottle to take the sludge villain in it. As he collected the last of the sludge, he turned to look at the kid that had fainted. I can't leave the kid here like this. All Might thought as he went towards the kid. Welp, time to be the hero, he thought as he looked at the child and bent down. Slap, 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 slap. Hey, wake up. A voice said, hey, wake up. This was what Izuku Midoriya woke up to, with somebody gently slapping his face to wake him up. He slowly opened his eyes, and the first thing he noticed was that there was the face with bright smile and blonde hair and a hand that was gently tapping his cheek. Thank goodness you are okay. All Might said as he noticed the eyes. They are not like how they were. Maybe it is a quirk. Izuku, on the other hand, was more flabbergasted as he looked at the number one hero. What would Izuku yelled out in surprise? You are number one hero, All Might. All Might, on the other hand, disregarded the outburst, and can you blame him? The guy gets these expression and exclamation most of the day. You are okay. Excellent. All Might spoke apologies, that you got caught up in villain hunt and nearly got severely injured. For that I am sorry, it was my mistake. And also All Might paused as he turned, and Izuku noticed that the hero brought out a bottle, which now contained the sludge that almost killed him. I must thank you. As because of you I've successfully captured the villain. Izuku, on the other hand, was thinking almost different thing. All Might is here. He is actually here. He saved me. And then he remembered something. Oh, an autograph, Izuku said as he looked around for the notebook that was with him. Where's my notebook? He looked around as he found his notebook lying on the ground and picked it up and opened up a page. He already did it. Oh, thank you. This is a treasure. This is going to be my family heirloom. Now I must bid you farewell. All Might said as he got ready to jump and fly away. I have to hand the villain to authorities. Wait, Izuku whisper spoke as he looked at the hero who was about to jump. I've so many questions that I want to ask you, but All Might was too busy to prepare himself to go away that he disregarded what Izuku was saying. Whoosh. Why do I am finding it a bit difficult in flying today? All Might thought as he kept flying. And what is that sound? True to his thoughts, All Might kept on hearing a mumbling sound that was coming from behind him. All Might turned to look behind, and what he saw made him blink and make his eyes go wide. There on his leg was the young man that he had just saved from the sludge villain. He quickly blinked as he looked towards the child, as his expression turned into an expression of disbelief and fear. What are you doing, young man? All Might yelled as he quickly moved his legs back and forth, trying his best to throw the tag along off him. Let go. I can't, Izuku said as he kept holding onto his leg. I will die if I do that. Now that made the number one hero pause. Oh right. Just hold on. With that, All Might quickly went towards a building, and with that began one of the most major confrontations that was needed in both of their lives, and will be the reason that would set stone for both of their future. But both managed to miss the bottle that fell from the pants of All Might. Katsumi Bakugo, a beautiful middle school teenage girl with a quirk to match her beauty. She has blonde hair and red eyes. She has an amazing quirk which is called Explosion, a quirk that she inherited from her mother and father. It is a combination of these two quirks that made her whole quirk. She is also one of the top students in her school, if not the best. She also has some temper problems, and she might have some issues, but never tell that to her face. She will probably use her quirk to make you go boom or blast you to Kingdom Come, which is not good either. And right now she was more than pissed, and the two clowns and a group of 3 extra beaches that follow her time to time like lost puppies, just for her attention, are not helping either. Can you believe it? One of the clowns said, she actually never bothered with their names, just called them extras, or something else. Deku still wants to become a hero. I mean, everybody knows that you can't become a hero if you don't have a quirk. It's practically suicide, especially with the villains that came up recently. Both of the extras didn't notice how Bakugo tightened her fists at their comments. Yeah, I mean he is very weak and quiet, frankly useless, as the other clown spoke, and with this spark started to come out of her hands. Does he really think he could survive it? Only I am allowed to speak like that about him. Bakugo mentally screamed as she kicked the Akin away. Where even is he? Deku usually crossed this place 5 minutes ago by now. She should know, after all, they were friends once. Somehow her mind went back to the last conversation they had today, and she cringed at how she spoke her final words today. Why did I even say that? She finally thought. Truthfully, she regretted what she had told him, as he was the only one that spoke to her, as if she was normal. Now only if he could stop stuttering when she goes to talk to him. Not his fault in that either with how she had treated him recently. But she will not take responsibility for that. It's that idiot's fault for dreaming to be a hero while still being quirkless. Why can't he understand that I am doing it for his safety? Katsumi thought, and then shook her head vigorously. It's not because she likes him. It's because he is her only true friend. Even if she treats him like trash or he follows her like a lost puppy. And that my friends are the sign of its tsundere, which she is not. Probably, maybe? In her frustration, she kicks a bottle away which shook a bit, not noticing the contents of the bottle spill out of it. Curse it, stop talking about him right now, she thought as the group behind her kept on talking about the Deku. He will just get in the way of the real heroes. Am I right, Katsumi? Another of the extras spoke out as she looked at the angry girl, who just looked more angry than usual right now. Yes, but another voice came this time. It was a bit shy and controlled like how Izuku spoke with her, but weren't you a little bit more cruel with what you told him, Bakugo? Now that did shut the group, but the final member of the group spoke up. Oh, shut up. The extra spoke up. You were saying that because you like that useless Deku. What? The previous voice yelled out and gave a nervous chuckle. Don't be ridiculous. Why would I like that Deku? I don't blame you for that, the last voice said again. He is a bit easy on the eyes compared to the rest of the class or the other boys we know. And that's why Katsumi considers the group of girls, and her dangerous small explosion started coming out of her hands. As she said that, the two clowns nearly lost their smoke pack that they brought out and were ready to yell about it to the other two girls. Katsumi then turned around ready to shut the group, but she got to see the two clowns lighting a smoke. Hey, what the hell are you two doing? She yelled at the two. I thought I told you to stop smoking around me. If you got caught, then it will get on my record too. With that, she grabbed a pack of cigarettes and used her quirk to blast it, not noticing the sudden terror that was instilled in the group. Why, what happened? She asked the group that was following her. The group was on the other hand too terrified to answer her as a giant sludge villain rose up behind her. A medium-sized body, a sinister voice came from behind her as a chill went down her spine with a powerful quirk. You will be the perfect cover for me. With that, the sludge villain that escaped from the All Might jumped at the girl to gain the control of her body. Katsumi, on the other hand, in defiance, let out a huge explosion in the area that got the attention of several people, including the pro heroes. A few distance away from where this happened, we see Izuku Midoriya walking towards his home with dead look in his eyes and more depressed than usual. I was right, Izuku said as small teardrops started falling from his eyes. Even All Might said it himself. You can't be a hero without a quirk. Izuku learnt the truth of All Might and his injury and the damage that he took 5 years ago, and also what All Might said about a quirkless not being able to be a hero. But there was something else that All Might said still stuck with him. You shouldn't lie, young man. Now remember that you must speak the truth and tell your friend get a reality check. They are not ready for the dangers that comes in this profession. Neither are those that have a quirk could sometimes survive this profession. There are several dangers in this for warehouse. Izuku watches in confusion as the shrunk-down version of the All Might walked to the roof they were at. Izuku learnt the truth about All Might too, about for how long he could hold his hero form that he could not hold for long, and his life-threatening injury, which is a lot disgusting for him. But seriously, what did he mean by lying? Last he checked, he was quirkless. Why did All Might thought that he was talking for someone else? Nonetheless, Izuku walked off toward his home in depression, this time mixed with confusion as to what All Might was talking about. As he kept on walking, he suddenly noticed the crowd that was gathering on the other side of the road with several heroes, which consisted of Backdraft, Death Arms, Kimui Woods, and Mount Lady, that were trying to go there and provide help. He also noticed that in the arms of Kimui Woods and Death Arms were a group of students from Aldera Junior High, if the uniform was anything to go by. He noticed the group specifically. It was the same group with which Kacchan was with, but right now she was not here in the group. A sudden feeling of dread settled a bit in the pit of his stomach as he didn't see Kacchan with the group. What is happening? He heard one of the bystander ask another person that was there. Oh, a villain has a middle school student as a hostage and the heroes are trying their best to stop the villain as we speak. The other guy answered. Isn't that the villain that All Might was chasing? Another voice piped in. Izuku walked through the crowd till he came near the front, a place from where he could see what was happening, and what he saw immediately gripped his heart with fear and guilt. In front of Izuku was the same sludge villain that had attacked him, but was defeated and captured by him. But here it was trying to take over his childhood, friend, the same way he tried with him. It's all my fault, Izuku thought as he brought his hands to cover his mouth. That villain escaped because of me. Kachin is feeling the same pain that I felt because of me. If I haven't done that, then All Might wouldn't have dropped the bottle. With that, he went down with the guilt, and he looked around to see why someone was not trying to help her. He saw Kimui Woods and Death Arms that held the middle schoolers, and considering the fire that was raging, it was not suitable condition for Kimui Woods. And Death Arms cannot help as the sludge monster composition was purely liquid, and he mostly deals with physical attack, which won't affect the monster. Mount Lady can't help if she can't even enter this place, and Backdraft was busy managing the fire and the civilians in the area. All in all, there was no one who could have helped her. Hold on. Please, Izuku internally pleaded to the girl, just hang in there. Someone would come to save you. And all of it changed when he saw the expression that was on Kachin. The fear that was in her eyes, the eyes which were pleading for someone to save her, and with that he ran forward. Hey kid, he heard one of the heroes shout out to him, what are you doing? Get back here. He is right, Izuku screamed again, what am I doing? My legs are working on their own. He watched himself running towards the villain that has his friend in it. The sudden shout made both the sludge villain and Katsumi look in his direction. Deku, Katsumi said as she watches in fear as he came running towards her. What are you doing, you idiot? She spoke internally, get out of here. You will get hurt. On the sidelines, their classmates watches as the useless Deku ran forward to save their friend. It's that kid, the sludge villain spoke, but there was something else when he shouted it. Bakugo wasn't certain, but she thinks she heard the undertone of anger and fear when the villain looked at him. Unknown to the rest of the people, there was another set of eyes of the familiar number one hero watched the kid that he met a few minutes ago run towards the villain blindly. What is that kid doing? All Might thought as the kid rushed out of the barricade and towards the villain. Is he trying to save her? Damn it, why I am so pathetic. I can't do anything right now. All Might thought while he watched the kid run towards the sludge villain. Why can't I stop? Izuku thought as he ran towards the villain. But as he kept closer, Izuku felt something in energy that he didn't know. He had a sudden power, and then he heard the voice again. What are you doing? A deep, terrifying voice rang in his head as he ran. Izuku, when he heard the voice, was a bit startled. Who is that? He thought, but the voice gave a frustrated growl. I won't ask again. The voice growled as the world slowed a bit for Izuku. What are you doing? I don't know. Izuku answers truthfully, and the voice sighed. Let me rephrase the question. The deep voice growled, why are you doing this? Running towards the creature like that? Now Izuku thought again, why was he doing this? What was the reason that he ran towards the villain to save his friend? Why did he ran to save her? When the Katsumi face came in front of him as tears were streaming down her face, trying her best to get out of the grasp of the villain. She looked like, Izuku thought as he kept in running, she needed saving. So you wish to save her? The voice asked again. Yes, Izuku answers the voice again. Very well then. The voice said as a sudden energy swept through him. Izuku was sure he saw a giant red slitted eye again. Unknown to him, and to the surprise of the people that knew of him. As he was running, his eyes changed color as it became red again, with the freckles on his cheek becoming more darker till it became large black spots on his cheeks, and a wisp of red energy rose with each step. Save her. And with that, a feeling of terror washed over everyone that was in the premises, a sudden terror that was making even the pro-heroes tremble in their places. The feeling was too dangerous and intimidating. What is this? Katsumi thought as the feeling of dread coursed through her veins. Why am I feeling such fear? She then looked towards Izuku. Why are his eyes red? Is that a quirk? No, he told me he is quirkless. He wouldn't lie to me, would he? Why am I feeling lightheaded? Get out of here, you idiot. He will live you. Go away. It's the feeling again. All Might thought as he looked on towards the green-haired teen. What is his quirk that it could make me feel such terror? He looked around the crowd and saw that all of them were feeling the same amount of fear, even the heroes. Stay back, the sludge monster said in panic as the red slitted eyes filled with rage and anger locked itself onto him. And in his fear, he pointed the arm that he was controlling Katsumi with towards him. Stop getting in my way, and with that let out a huge explosion from her hands forced by the villain. Several heroes jumped in front of the civilian that were in the way of the blast, as all of them watched in horror as the blast subsided to show nothing in the place of the blast. Even the ground took the damage. Katsumi looked on in horror as she saw her childhood friend incinerated by her explosion, with silent tears dripping down her face. All Might fell on his knees as he failed yet another person. Other heroes and civilians looked to much shock as a child was disintegrated in front of them, because of the fire let out by the hands of another person that was being controlled by the villain. While the villain himself let out a relieved sigh as a giant grin began to form on his face. He would have laughed if it wasn't for a voice that sent shiver down his spine. Sludge doesn't have a spine, right? So it sent shiver down his sludge? Whatever. Hey, the villain turned back, forcing Katsumi to turn with him to show Izuku Midoriya, unharmed, standing there with his bag. Everybody watched in surprise as the kid they thought died in the blast stood behind the villain. All Might was relieved when he saw the kid was unharmed. Katsumi had tears of relief streaming down her cheeks, but there was something off. Izuku's voice was never that heavy. The villain, on the other hand, was terrified. Let her go. Stay back, the villain said again with fear leaking into his voice. I said, Izuku said again with a growl. Let her go. The villain, instead of listening to him, lashed out with a tendril attack in panic. But instead of being caught, Izuku jumped back and then turned to the side as he began running through the attacks. The sludge shot few more of the tendrils, hoping to catch him off guard, but instead of being caught, Izuku jumped and dodged the slimy tendrils again. As he came a few feet from the sludge, when drew his hand back and grasped his backpack and then threw it at the villain where his eyes were, with the sludge being blinded because of the bag, which made it easier for him to get hold of Katsumi. He quickly used the extra strength that the energy provided and yanked her out of the sludge. He then slung her over himself and jumped away when the villain got his bearings. Meanwhile, the terrifying feeling in Izuku's red eyes and the darkened freckles turned back to normal. The kids are free. Izuku heard the voice of Death Arm. Somebody get them out of here, he commanded. Why? Katsumi asks quietly and lazily as her eyes dropped a bit as she looks down while holding Izuku, who turns to look at her in confusion along with a drowsy expression. Why did you do it? Izuku, on the other hand, gave her a smile. My legs just started moving on their own, Kachin. He stated in an exhausted tone, but before anybody could speak again, the sludge monster got his bearing back. You, the villain growled out as he looks at the teenagers, with his eyes locking onto the one with green hair, who is the reason he got caught the first time and made him feel fear. I will unalive you, the monster yelled out as he launched himself at him. Both Katsumi and Izuku watched on in horror and exhaustion as the villain drew near the two. Wuchi suddenly both vanished from the place where they were at. Look, it's All Might, one of the civilian yelled as he pointed towards a giant man crouching on the ground as he laid the two teens gently down on the ground, both of them knocked out because of exhaustion. I am truly pathetic, aren't I? All Might spoke quietly while looking at the teen with green hair. I should practice what I preach, the lesson I left you with, that a pro hero should always be ready to risk his life to save others. With that, All Might turned back in the direction of the villain, who was now more scared than ever, and took a punching stance. No, I can't lose now. I can't be captured by you again. The villain said as he made giant fist made of sludge. I will defeat you too. All Might, with that, the sludge villain yelled out his battle cry and lunged at the hero. Curse you, All Might. Detroit, All Might said. He reared his fist back and made his fist fly towards the villain. Smash as he let his fist go. The power behind the fist made the sludge villain explode as the shockwave from the punch was able to put out the fire and was able to clear the weather. Holy cow, did you see that? Yeah, he was able to change the weather with his punch. Of course he could. He is called All Might for a reason. And with that, the crowd broke into cheers for the #1 hero. All the while, the hero kept his gaze on the down green-haired teen who was knocked out. Looks like I found the one I was looking for. Nana, All Might thought as he looked at him. Now only I need to know what his quirk is. After being checked on by the paramedics as the rest of the heroes collects the splatters of the villain, Izuku was scolded by the pro hero for barging into the scene with carelessness. Moreover, the confusion that was there increased at least by tenfold when they began to question about his quirk. Do you know what you did, kid? Death Arms said as he loomed over Izuku as Katsumi was praised by the other heroes a few distance away in the ambulance. You do know that the use of your quirk without license is illegal. Quirk? Izuku said as he tilted his head to the side in confusion. Yes, your quirk. Death Arms said again as he watched the kid look more confused than ever. But I am quirkless, Izuku stated as all the heroes surrounding him stopped. Don't lie, kid. Kimui Woods spoke out from his place. You can't do the things you did without a quirk. Now this confused Izuku more than ever. But I am quirkless. Izuku was firm in his statement as the pro hero Death Arms and Kimui Woods exchanged silent look between them. The quirk specialist said I can't have a quirk because of the extra joint in my toe. Both Death Arms and Kamui Woods looked at the teen, who looking at the two in confusion. When Death Arms made a decision for the two. Hey kid. Death Arms started as he looked over the kid. What's your name? Oh, Izuku Midoriya, sir. Izuku, answered the hero. Izuku. Huh. Okay, listen here. Death Arms said as he brought out a visiting card for him. I want you to come to my agency with this card tomorrow and tell the person at the reception for me. You know the address, right? If not, the address of the agency is on the card. Now remember, I want you at my agency tomorrow by 3:00 in the afternoon. So here he was now, walking down the street to his home with the card that Death Arms gave him of his agency after they took care of the police for letting him go. Why did he ask him to come to his agency? Izuku thought as he walked down the street with confusion on his face. Deku, a female voice shouted, making him come out of his musing. Kachin. Izuku said in confusion, turned to look at Katsumi, who was with her group. Why are all of them here? Katsumi hesitated to speak when she was given a push from behind which made her turn back to glare at the girl that was with her in the group. She turned to look at Izuku, who was looking at the group in confusion. I didn't need saving today, you hear me? Behind her the two clowns face-bombed, and the other two sighed, whereas the last glared daggers at her back. I didn't ask you to save me. I didn't need your pity. I don't need your help. Hell, I could have beaten that guy myself. No, you can't. Katsumi turned back around to glare at the woman that said that with such speed that she might have gotten whiplash from it. She came face to face with a glare from the same girl. Now she remembers why she tolerates this girl. She could match her glare. She then turned back to Izuku, who was looking at the group in confusion. But Katsumi said as she looked at ground, thank you for trying to help me. But don't think that this will be happening again, so that you could be hero. Understand with that she turned around and went to another street for going home. What she means to say is the girl that was pinching Katsumi, and possibly the only girl in the class that hadn't treated Izuku that badly, thank you for saving her, when nobody was. With that, this girl also turned around to hoe towards her home, and with that the group slowly dispersed, giving him their thanks for helping Katsumi. But this left Izuku with nothing much more than more confusion. What was that about? He watched as the whole group dispersed and went for their homes. After the whole street was empty, Izuku turned back so that he could go back home, with the visiting card of Death Arms safely tucked in his pocket. I am here, All Might yelled as his sudden appearance gave Izuku a scare. All Might, Izuku shouted with a jump. Why are you here? Weren't you surrounded by the police? Shaking them of is nothing for me. All Might said as he looked at the teen, while giving him a two-fingered salute. After all, I'm all cough blagger. He promptly coughed out as he shrunk down to his real form of a malnutrition man. All Might, Izuku yelled as he went near the man who was busy coughing up. Are you okay? I am all right, young man. The small Might said as he looked at the teen again, but I am here for another reason. He spoke as he stood straight. I am here to thank you. But why? Izuku said, interrupting the small form of All Might. I mean, what happened today was my fault from the start. If I hadn't gotten in the way, then there wouldn't have been the situation that happened today. And then I got in the way of the pro heroes when they were trying to save Kachin. I will stop you there, young man. All Might said as he brought his hand up to stop him. When you jumped in to save your friend, what were you thinking? He asked the teen sincerely as Izuku tried to think what was it that he was thinking when he jumped in to save her. And Izuku knew that he was not thinking when he did that. Let me take a guess. You weren't thinking, your legs ran on your own. When All Might said this, Izuku looked up to him as he told him exactly what he did. Most of the true heroes shows greatness even as children. They say that their bodies move before any of them could even think. That's what happened back there, is it not? He spoke and tears started to stream down Izuku's face as all the memories from the past went by his eyes. Of all the people in the crowd, it was you, a timid child who took the initiative to save someone, which spurred me into action. All Might said as the image of the doctor who told him that he didn't have a quirk. I am afraid there's no hope for him. The doctor sitting on the chair said as brought out a X-ray. Your action made me realize my hypocrisy. You can't be a hero, Deku. You are quirkless. Katsumi Bakugo said as she stood over him. Why can't he understand? He can't be a hero. Another of his classmates said he is such a loser. I mean, a quirkless being a hero. I am sorry, Izuku. Inko Midoriya cried as he held on to her child as he watched the video of All Might saving the people from the burning building. I am so sorry. That was not what I wanted to hear, Mom. Izuku thought as he looked at the skinny figure of All Might as he bowed in front of him on his knees crying as he stood over him. You young man, All Might said, looking at the teen, can be a hero. He then brought his hand up in the air. And I deem you worthy of inheriting my quirk. Cue the tears that he was shedding stopped as he looked at the number one hero in confusion. Huh. He tilted his head in confusion. And before I give you my quirk, I would like to discuss about your quirk. Now he was more confused than ever. Discuss about my wa? H. Shut up. Shut up, the voice he had been hearing since meeting Sludge Villain, and when he jumped in to save Kachin roared out in frustration. I am trying to sleep here. After hearing the voice again with such anger made Izuku jump up in fright. Who was that? Izuku asks in surprise while looking around, surprising All Might. There is nobody here, young one. All Might said as he also around to see if someone else was there. But I just heard someone telling me to shut up. Izuku was looking around in panic when he remembered something and looked at the hero again. Wait, what do you mean by my quirk? I don't have a quirk. The number one hero looked at the teen in surprise. Now, young man, you don't need to lie. But he saw the look of disbelief that the teen was giving him. Wait, you aren't lying? All Might asked again as a part of him remembered a guy who was able to give quirks. Well, I am not supposed to. Izuku told the man as he looked at the hero. The quirk specialist said that I can't have a quirk because of the extra joint in my pinky toe. All Might waited for some more things to come from him, but when Izuku said nothing, he was downright horrified. Wait, that's it? All Might asks him as Izuku gave a nod of confirmation. He didn't do any blood test or level readings or other tests. All Might asks him again, which got him a look of confusion. There were other tests? He asks genuinely. Recovery girl is going to kill that doctor. All Might muttered under his breath, so the kid might have a quirk that he didn't even know he had, and after all that time, he used it today unintentionally. So there are chances that you might have a quirk, so before I give you my quirk, we would have to find out about your quirk. So why don't I take you for the quirk examination test tomorrow? A proper one this time. Izuku, on the other hand, was more surprised than ever. So what do you say, kid? Oh, All Might. Izuku started as he brought out a visiting card for a hero agency. Death Arms asked me to come to his agency tomorrow. Izuku said, looking apologetic before his eyes widened in surprise. Do you think that they want to know about my quirk too? He asks the number one hero. They could be. All Might said as he looked at the teen. I mean, you did use it in the public even if it was to save life. And something horrifying dawned on the green-haired teen. I found out I have a quirk. Izuku whispered in the beginning as his tone kept on rising, and I used it in public on live television. Oh no, it would show on my record as a vigilante. I can't get admission in U.A if it goes on my record. I could go to jail. My mom would die if she found out I am going to jail. Not before she killed me first. Wait, I've quirk. My mom needs to know I have a quirk. Oh, she will be so happy when she is going to know that I've got a quirk. I got to tell Dad too. And with that the teen went to a mumble frenzy, with All Might looking over him with a bit discomfort. Unknown to the two, he was giving someone else a headache. I said shut up, the voice that Izuku heard roared again, making him jump in surprise with a shriek and making him land in All Might's arms. What happened? All Might asked the child. It was that voice again. Izuku said as silence now surrounds both of them. I think that is your quirk, young one. All Might finally spoke, coming to a conclusion. My quirk has sentience? Izuku spoke in surprise as he looked at the hero. I mean, I've heard that there are quirks that could think for themselves. But even then it is said that these quirks have a quirk for themselves. But before he could go into a mumble frenzy, All Might interrupted him. Yes, young one. All Might said, not wanting to hear a long-winded explanation. But still haven't answered me. What is your answer for being the heir of my quirk? Wait, you could give people your quirk? Izuku spoke in wonder. Yes, young one, Small Might said as he looked at the smaller teen. You might have heard many stories about my quirk, like it was strength-enhancing quirk or power booster. But young one, my power, he raised his hands and brought his hands up. It was passed down to me. Wait, passed down to you? Izuku said in confusion. Really? Yes, Small Might said as he looked at the kid. You can ask me any question regarding it. Whoa, wait, just hold on for a moment. Izuku spoke as his eyes turned into swirls. Your quirk is supposed to be one of the 7 mysteries of the world, and there have been debates over it. There isn't day wherein Eupherius brought up Bithimadiant Hiri war saying jit waspicidown to him nobody the tofta befor, mumble mumble mumble. Shut the hell up, the voice is very grumpy, and the yell in his head made him jump up a great height. Whoa kid, what happened? All Might said as Izuku fell onto his, but are you okay? Oh, nothing, it was the voice again telling me to shut up. Izuku said while looking at the number 1 hero. I think I get it. All Might said, then coughed. All right, let me explain my quirk. The quirk that could be passed down. He brought his hands out, which then started to glow with power. My quirk, the ability to transfer power, that's the quirk I inherited, it's called. The glow in the hand started to intensify. One for all. One for all. Izuku quietly whispered. The first person that had this quirk cultivates the power and passes it on. All Might said as he paused, then looked at the sky. The second refines it, and then they passed it on to their heir. In this way, those who are crying out to be saved, and those with brave and true hearts, link together to form a crystalline network of power. And now I have chosen my successor. That is you. But why me? Izuku asks while sitting on the road. Back at that place with the villain, out of all the people. All Might spoke up as he looked at the teen. Only you, a mere child, who didn't even knew or understood his quirk, ran in there to save someone. You were more heroic there than anyone else, even me at the time. And for that I've chosen you to be my successor. He then gave a small grin. Of course, it will be only if you choose that. As he said this, Izuku rose up from his place as began to think over what has been spoken up by the number 1 hero. He chose me, Izuku thought as he rubbed his eyes. He told me his greatest secret, putting his faith in me. Do I have a reason not to accept? And he finally gave his answer. I accept. Izuku, answered the hero. A quick answer. All Might said as he rubbed his hair. I expected nothing less. Now the only thing left is to find out about your quirk, and why did it take too late for you to activate it? Also, why did Death Arms ask for you to come meet him tomorrow? All Might said while pondering his thoughts. He then turned to look at the young teen who was looking at him for answers. Young man, do you mind if I come tomorrow with you to his agency? Huh? No sir, Izuku said as he brought his hands up. You can definitely come with me. All right then. Give me the time when he asked you to meet and your address. I will pick you up tomorrow, okay? With that, Izuku happily wrote down his contact and house address, as he also told him the time when he has to reach there. All right then, young Midoriya. All Might spoke while he picked his grocery from the side. He had left it. I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Until then, young one. With that, both Izuku and All Might walked off in opposite direction, both with new hope for the future. All the while, both forgot one single thing, which Izuku quickly found out when he reached home, when his mother came through the door of their home, hugging the life out of him as she bawled her eyes out. Izuku Inko Midoriya, a rather plump woman who gained weight due to stress, yelled out as she kept fussing over her child. Are you okay? She asked her son in worry. You are not hurt, are you? Did the sludge villain hurt you? I am okay, Mom. Izuku told her mom as he hugged her mother to reassure her he is all right. I am not hurt. Wait, how did you know about that? And with that, Inko pointed towards the TV and Izuku remembered what he had forgot. There were news reporters, journalists, and media present when Izuku used his quirk. That means right now, the quirkless kid who used a quirk on TV, which is being watched by several people, including his mother, probably his father. If All Might presence was anything to go by, it will be over every channels, even overseas, all the students and teacher back at the school, the people at UA, and most importantly, Kachin. Izuku mumbled as he looked at the TV, knowing what his childhood friend/bully will be thinking right now. An image of Katsumi with angry expression, 2 horns as the world behind her burns to ground and making him explode appeared in his mind. How dare you hide from me that you had a quirk, you quirkless Deku? Kachin. Izuku called out to his friend. The sentence did not make sense. You dare to question my grammar, Deku? Hue explosion as Izuku fly away because of the said explosion. Back in reality, Izuku whimpered from it. You have a quirk, Inko stated as she looked at the screen properly this time, and noticed the darkened freckles and red slitted eyes. My baby has a quirk. She spoke a little loudly this time as she looked back at her son. You have a quirk, Inko finally shouted in disbelief and excitement. But how the doctor said that? You can't have a quirk. Izuku gave a dry chuckle as he looked at his mother. Yes, Mom, I know, Izuku said as he dried her tears. Turns out he was scamming us this whole time. After hearing this, the worried expression on the face of Inko Midoriya turned into one of pure rage. Oh, that no good doctor, Inko mumbled under her breath. When I find him, I'll... Mom, Izuku called out to his mother. Forget about him. I found out I have a quirk. I can achieve my childhood dream now. Izuku noticed an uncomfortable look on his face as he looked at her. Mom, what happened? Do you really want to be a hero, Izuku? His mother asks as she looks at the ground as tears started slipping down her cheeks. He was about to speak up, but Inko continued, I know that it is your dream, and I know you wanted me to support you for that dream. But she then looked back at the screen where the news still showed the scene where Izuku ran into the danger. When I saw you ran headfirst into the danger, my heart stopped. Seeing you in that kind of danger. I know you did that to save Katsumi, but seeing you running like that, and when the sludge villain let out that explosion, I thought that I lost you, that I won't see you again. And then I remembered what you dreamed to be. You wanted to be a hero, and hero takes risks like that all the time. And I don't want to see that. One day waiting on the couch hearing about your DDEA, and with that she broke down crying again. Izuku on the other hand tried to understand what she was saying. A part of him wanted to be angry, but another part of him wanted to comfort his mother. Hey mom. Izuku called out after few moments, you remember, when we used to play pretend, where I would be a superhero and I will come to save you. Inko nodded her head as the tear flow became a little slow. You know what I told you during that time. I will always come to save you. Izuku said as tear formed in his eyes too, so I want you to trust me when I tell you that I will come back. I know that you will always worry, but I want you to know that I will never do something that will make you upset, especially something like that. So please mom, don't worry. I finally have a way to achieve my dream, and it won't be same without you by my side. You made me the person I am today, the same person that ran in there to save Kachin. You are my first teacher. I can't complete my dream without you, mom. Now tears were falling freely from his face. So please, mom, believe in me that I could become hero, and I will be okay. With that said, both mother and son drew in for another hug as both bawled their eyes out for another 15 minutes. Izuku Inko called out to her son after getting out of the hug, I am sorry for not believing in you when you asked me if you could become a hero like All Might. Don't worry, mom. Izuku answered her mother as he stood up from the place where he was hugging her. I know you were worried and sad. And Izuku Inko spoke again as he turned to look at her. You will always be my hero. Remember that. With that, Izuku gave his mother a bright smile, which she returned. I will, mom. Now this called for celebration, don't you think? With that, both mother and son went towards the kitchen, enjoying and celebrating the fact that Izuku now had a quirk, not knowing the amount of people who are going to watch that news and how many people that are going to show interest in him after today. League of Villain Base. A man sitting on a chair with shadows obscuring the upper part of his face and several wires that were sticking out of his face that were connected to several medicines and 4 along with his hands. The person wore a full black suit as he watched the news that showed All Might saving the 2 child. But it was not the hero that held his attention. It was the child with the red eyes and green hair that grabbed his attention. Plain looking, the person thought as he looked over the said child. Also a weak body, and initially no self-confidence, and shows uncertainty and fear in his eyes, not until he ran in to save the girl. Not only that, I think I knew someone like him. But whom? Not important. He then looked directly in the eyes. Yet why did those eyes make me feel? He looked deeply in the red slitted eyes, watching as the news paused, as it showed the darkened freckles and red slitted eyes glaring at the sludge villain Fear. Few miles away from the city, in a giant Japanese mansion, a man wearing a plain purple shirt and a plague mask over his mouth watched the news in fascination as the child dodged the explosion that near, in the fact that not only he dodged the attack, the way he moved and how he aimed at the sludge monster eyes and took the girl. But there was something else that was making the child his interest. It was not the fact that he was able to dodge and the movements. No, it was the eyes that promised suffering and anguish and hatred and rage. The eyes made him feel the one thing that he thought that he would never feel, never in a million years, a feeling that a Yakuza like him should never feel. The eyes made him feel terror. Sir, one of his subordinates came running in the room. Eri ran away again. The person could only sigh as he stood up and went to find that troublesome child again. England, London. Hey man, Hisashi, come here, look. A man with brown hair and a mop top looked up from the dish he was making, saw another person with burgundy hair, waving his arm at him, calling him near a TV. This man was Hisashi Midoriya, husband of Inko Midoriya and father to Izuku Midoriya. He is one of the head chef in one of the most popular hotels and restaurants chain. He looks at the man with who was calling him and quickly washed his hands on his apron and went to look at what his friend was calling him to show. Look, Hisashi. The man called out to his friend who was looking at the TV. It's your son, Izuku. Now that confused him. Why was Izuku on T.V? What do you mean, Tom? He then turned towards T.V to see what was it that made him so antsy. Is that Izuku? What's he doing? And is that Katsumi? Yes, apparently he used Quirk to save that girl's life, Tom said as he looked at the news. Now that is something his son would do. He did the same thing a few times himself. Wait, did he said Quirk? What do you mean he used Quirk? Hisashi asks his friend as he looked at the news with concern. That's the thing, Tom said as he looked at his friend from Japan, who also makes some of the best dishes in the place. You told me that he was quirkless? He is supposed to be, Hisashi said as he looked at the screen. I mean, the doctor did say that, and so did the report that was sent by him. You think that the doctors made some kind of mistake while he checked for his quirk? Tom asks. Well, it could have happened. Hisashi spoke in an unsure tone as he looked at him. Well, we need to figure it out, because your son used a quirk in public without license. He could land in trouble. Wrap all of it up, and we will head out so that you could call home, Tom said as he went to a room in the side. But I can't leave all of this like this. What would I tell the boss if he found out? Before this goes to boss, it comes to me, my friend, or did you forgot that I am a manager of this fine establishment? Tom said as he looked at him. Yes. Hisashi spoke truthfully. For a moment I forgot. While Tom looked at him in deadpan expression. Hisashi, get your things, we are going, Tom said as he brought some keys out. Thank you so much, Tom, Hisashi said as he went to get cleaned and leave for his job. You can thank me later, right now get your things. Detnarat Company. A middle-aged man with spiky orange hair and a long pointed nose, and as well as dark red eyes. He looked at the screen that showed the child with red slitted eyes. Fascinating. He noticed that when the eyes of the child changed from green to red, the whole crowd went silent. If he could join MLA, there are chances that we could force the plan of our group. Bakugo household. Katsumi watched the news in surprise. She was still reeling from the events of the day. She was not yet ready for this. Especially this, finding out that the Deku had a quirk all this time. But if he had a quirk, why didn't he told her that he had a quirk? She knows that they were not as close as they were before, but still, if Deku had a quirk, he would have possibly told her. She turned her head to the side to where her father and mother, who both hugged her when they saw her inside the sludge villain, watched the news in surprise. She was a spitting image of her mother. Katsumi knew that. Also, she took most of her personality from her mother. She noted that both of them looked at the news in bewilderment, especially the part where his eyes changed to slits. Katsumi, her father, Masaru Bakugo, called out to her as he kept his gaze on the news. Did you know about it? Katsumi looked at the news and then to her father. No, Dad, I did not know, Katsumi said as she looked at her father. And I know that Deku would have told me that he had a quirk. She then tightened her fist as a number of thoughts went through her head. Did I pushed him away that much, that he did not thought about telling me his quirk? She thought as she looked at the screen where Izuku red eyes shone. Mitsuki Bakugo, on the other hand, stood up and went to the landline. All right, I need to figure this out, Mitsuki said as she dialed the number of her best friend. I know Inko would have told me if she knew Izuku had a quirk. And Masaru didn't say anything else. He knew that Inko and Mitsuki were best friends. They share every news with each other. She was there with Inko when they found out he was quirkless, and she let her cry on her shoulder, crying about breaking his son's heart. She is probably as much hurt as her daughter right now. He knew that recently both Izuku's and Katsumi's relationship was a little strained with how Katsumi takes most after her mother, but he knew that why she was doing it, and he did not like that reasoning. He tried to dissuade her from that, but alas, she is her mother's daughter, and in the end she did not stop. Hey, Masaru called out to her daughter, don't worry. He would have a very good reason to hide the fact that he had a quirk. Unlike some people, he thought as he looked at his daughter and wife. Sometimes both of them lose it without any sound reason. But Katsumi only tightened her fist around her hand at his reason. She knew that he wouldn't hide this from her, but a part of her was afraid that he hid this news from her on purpose. Tell me if you are okay, he asked her daughter, who almost died today. I am okay, Katsumi said as she turned to look at her mother. Mitsuki waited as the phone of Midoriya house rang for 3 times before the phone was picked up by Inko Midoriya. Hey Inko, Mitsuki started as he leaned on the wall. How are you? On that note, how is Izuku? There was nice on the other side of the line as Mitsuki heard the question. Yes, I saw the news, Inko, and Katsumi is fine thanks to Izuku. Are you sure he is okay? She asks, and there were few more words that were spoken from the other end of the line. Hold up 1 second. Mitsuki said as she stood up in straight position and walked around the room. What do you mean you guys found out he has a quirk? Now this brought the attention of father-daughter duo who were listening in the conversation. Didn't you told me the doctor said he is quirkless and couldn't get a quirk? There was some more chatter from the other side, which made Mitsuki eyes burn with rage. What do you mean the doctor scammed you guys? Now that made Masaru surprised and made Katsumi hand tightened around the skirt she wore as her eyes burned with rage. She made Deku life a living hell just because of the doctor who gave a fake report. When I find that doctor, I am going to squish that jackass face. She then heard some more things from the other end of the line. What do you mean calm down? Mitsuki shouted into phone. I am going to have that doctor's license for this. Some more chatter. Of course we will come. Even Katsumi will come. She has to thank Izuku for today. Katsumi glared at her mother for that. And then you and I are going to discuss what to do with that doctor. Okay, she really needs to tone down a bit. Another chatter comes from the phone. Fine, we will discuss this tomorrow. Mitsuki then took a pause as she remembered something. Hey, can you tell me what his quirk is, apart from the speed, reflexes, and the red eyes? Now this had Katsumi attention in a much better way than the other things they talk about. There was a pause on the line, and when the chatter began again, showing Inko Midoriya asking her son about the quirk. What do you mean you don't know? Now that is a surprise. The guy who could break down any quirk with a glance was unable to decipher what his quirk could do. He is going for quirk examination test again? Mitsuki showed a confused expression which was copied by her daughter, making Masaru laugh at the similarities between the two. Okay, then I will meet you tomorrow. We could also know about his quirk then. Okay. There was some more chatter from the line as Mitsuki sighed. Alright, I will see you both tomorrow. Mitsuki said, and tell Izuku thanks from us, Inko. There was some more chatter that was on the call. Good night, Inko. Mitsuki bid her friend as she went back to the couch where the family was. And don't cry, alright. With that, Mitsuki put the phone down as she looked back to her daughter. Well, brat. Mitsuki turned to looks like we are going to Midoriya's tomorrow. Try to dress properly for tomorrow. Shut up, you hag. Katsumi turned to her mother who was looking and at the screen. And Katsumi, Mitsuki said to the surprise of the two, never make me scared again. Ever, you understand, brat. Katsumi was surprised. Her mother never shows her compassionate side more often, but when she does, she is actually must be a lot worried than she thought. Don't worry, Mom. Now that surprised Mitsuki. She knows that her daughter almost never calls her that. So that means the incident must have affected her in more ways than one. I won't do that again, ever. I am going to prepare dinner. Mitsuki said as she stood up. You go freshen up too. She told her daughter as she went to the kitchen, her husband's gaze following her. I will come down in a bit, okay? Katsumi said to her father as she went to her room, as her father could do nothing more than sigh at his family antics and situation. They really need to communicate more, Masaru thought as he looks at both the mother and daughter. In a huge building sat a being, which looks to be somewhat of a mix between a mouse, a bear, and human or something else, but somewhat very weird. But the being was actually one of the smartest being the whole world, with an IQ that was much higher than the human, with the quirks to boost their intelligence. Who was this being? Well, this is none other than Nizu, Mr. Principal, the principal of UA, one of, if not, the best heroes academy, where aspiring heroes come to learn. He looked at the news in interest and fascination. He has been contacted by the All Might a few hours earlier, informing him of his chosen heir. And who was he? Well, he did not give him a name, considering that even he did not learn about it till he found the kid again. But he has to say he is impressed by the choice that Yagi made in choosing his successor, and also to keep him out of trouble for the illegal quirk use. They are after all one of the most weird set of rules. He then took a sip of the tea he brewed as he looked at the screen in fascination. The year to come is going to be much more interesting, Nizu thought while looking at the screen. Now why did he erase her head? Expelled the whole class this time. Few students I could handle a whole class. Doesn't he know the backlash UA will get from this? He thought while looking at file of complaints from the parents, this time about an incompetent and a rude teacher. In a dark place in an unknown location, a man covered by the shadows looked at the screen in surprise and fascination as he watched the news with his full concentration. Most importantly, his gaze was stuck on two children in particular, one that was taken as the hostage by the villain and the other who ran into the situation to save that other. But most of the time his gaze was stuck on the one with green hair. The man brought his hand to his chin and rubbed it. Well, look at that, Hisashi. The man spoke as he watched the news show how the kid ran into the situation your son takes after you the most. Now I need to make sure they don't end up in any more trouble. God knows how many people were after him. He then looked closely at the bright red slitted eyes, now only have to figure out what his quirk is. Back at Midoriya's household, Izuku looked at the ceiling with newfound hope and inspiration, and with the news that he now have a quirk. He was sure that now, with All Might teaching him and his quirk, he could be a hero. Izuku closed his eyes going to sleep, but as he did that he saw sudden flashes of images, a village, a giant moon that was being broken, huge animals with tails, a man with red eyes with tomos in one and purple with rings in the other. Then he saw another man who was covered in golden cloak of sorts glowing brightly. Then he saw that, orange fur, giant 9 tails and the red slitted eyes glaring down on him. The eyes made him wake up with a jolt. What was that? Midoriya household. The next day, Inko Midoriya happily hummed a tune as she prepared the lunch for the two of them and Mitsuki, who was going to be here around noon or a bit later. She allowed Izuku to sleep in today with what happened tomorrow, and with him getting his quirk, she had to let him have a calm day. She kept on making the lunch when the doorbell of their home rang. Coming, she yelled out to whoever that was on the door. She put the chopped vegetable aside as she went to get the door. Once she reached the door, she swung the door open to show the familiar face of her blonde best friend, who was also carrying several bags. Mitsuki Inko hugged her best friend, as who returned the hug, and with bags still in her hands. How are you? And how's Katsumi? Aren't they here with you? She asks her as she stepped aside for her to enter. I am fine, Inko, and so is Katsumi. Mitsuki replied as she put the bags down. Katsumi decided to head school today, about how she wasn't going to chicken out just because of some villain attack, and yes, that's exactly the word she used. I wonder where she get these words from? Meanwhile, Inko gave her friend a deadpan expression. Anyhow, she is in school, and said she will arrive later, and so will Masaru. He will head here after completing his project at his job. You, on the other hand, my friend, need to hit a gym. Inko was to give an answer when she thought about it a bit. You know what Inko said as she pondered as she looked at her friend? Maybe I should. This got a surprised reaction out of Mitsuki. Oh, don't be surprised. I was thinking of joining before, and now with the news that Izuku getting his quirk and Hisashi coming back in 7 months, I would be more than happy to lay off some of the weight I gained over the years. Hisashi's coming back. Mitsuki spoke out in surprise. Good for you and him. Please tell me he is coming back permanently. Now at that, Inko snorted. As if. Inko said his boss is still an idiot and he still has another year left of his contract before he could come back. He is coming on a month-long vacation. You know, I never liked his boss. No one does, Mitsuki. With that, Inko went back to the kitchen. Now you are going to help me find the gym for me. You could come to mine. Inko actually liked that idea, and with her friend their age, she wouldn't feel like a stranger. I actually like that idea. She kept cooking the lunch for the group. As she looked, Mitsuki sat on the couch. And Inko, we really need to do something about that doctor. Mitsuki said to her friend, who was busy cutting the vegetables she needed for the lunch and also preparing for the celebration that they were going to have in the evening. Oh, we will, Mitsuki. Inko said as her hand tightened around the knife she was using to cut, and he has a hell to pay for what he did. Suddenly fire lit in her eyes as dark aura surrounded her, and another knife flew towards her which she suddenly caught hold of and stabbed the vegetable she was chopping with full might. Believe me, he will pay. Sometimes I forgot how dangerous Inko could be, Mitsuki thought as she stood up to glance at the vegetable, a cabbage she found out after she saw it. She had stabbed. Hey, Mom. The sudden voice brought both of them out of the funk. Aunt Mitsuki? Izuku entered the drawing room with confusion after seeing his friend's mother here. Hey, Izuku. Mitsuki greeted her friend's son as she looked at him. How are you? She asks him. I am fine. Thank you for asking, Auntie. He replied, and then said as she turned and gave him a grateful smile, and Izuku. Thank you. She spoke with gratefulness for saving her. She is my friend, Auntie. Izuku gave a smile to her as he sat on the other side of the couch with both Mitsuki and Inko sitting on the opposite. I would have run in to save her no matter what. Yes, and for that. Mitsuki rubbed her eyes as they got a bit misty on the edge. I am very thankful. As she said this, she stood up and picked up one of the bag from the one she brought. And also last night we found out that you had a quirk, which all of us ignored because of that trash of a doctor. Both Inko and Mitsuki frowned when their thoughts went back to the doctor, whereas Izuku grimaced because what his life has been because of that doctor. So Masaru, and I brought a gift for you as a congratulations for finally getting your quirk. She handed him the bag, as Izuku reluctantly took it from her. You don't have to, Aunt Mitsuki, Izuku said as she looked over the bag. Nonsense, Mitsuki said as she waved her hands. Now hurry up and see what is it. She spoke with excitement as Inko looked over at her friend. You do not know what's the gift, do you? Inko asks Mitsuki as Essie rubbed her head. Actually no, Mitsuki sheepishly said as she looked at mother and son. It was actually Katsumi and Masaru who choose it. Izuku now looked surprised. Kachan choose it? He asked while looking over the gift. Yeah, she did, Mitsuki said with a nod, then remembered something. Don't tell her I told you that. She does not want you to know that. That seems like her, Izuku said with a smile. Tell me about it. Mitsuki spoke with a snort and looked over at the two. She needs to get off her high horse one of these days. Otherwise she is going to land in trouble. So come on, open it. I want to see what did she got you. She spoke as she moved to sit with her friend. Izuku quickly pulled the object from the bag, which wrapped up. He unwrapped it and put the wrapping aside to open a box that contained a t-shirt, and not just any t-shirt. It's an All Might Golden Age limited edition t-shirt. Izuku spoke as he looked at the t-shirt in surprise, while Mitsuki spoke as she too looked at the said t-shirt. Even Inko looked surprised. Isn't that one of those wearable that are made in very limited supply? Inko asks her friend. Yep, she answered while popping the pea. Where did she get this? Inko asks again, which got her a really expression from Mitsuki. My husband works in the fashion department. Mitsuki spoke out with a deadpan. I really wonder where he could have got it from. Read this part with sarcasm. Now don't be like that, Mitsuki. Before anyone else could speak up again, the doorbell to their apartment rang again, as the three of them looked at each other in confusion. Was there anyone else that was going to come? Mitsuki turns to look at her friend when Izuku jumped up in surprise, remembering who was coming here. I'll see who's that, Izuku said as he went towards the door. And when he did, he was shocked into silence with the people that were at his door. And no, it was not the small form of All Might that was standing in front of him, and neither it was a man dressed in a long brown overcoat. It was the woman that was with them that made his jaw drop. And now you might be wondering who this woman might be who was able to make Midoriya's jaw drop. So for that, let me just get one fact straight for all of you guys. Izuku Midoriya, as he is now, is very much dense and an idiot regarding girls, and he is more into heroes, not in a romantic way, than anything else. And the woman that Small Might has brought with him. She is an old woman of small stature, with gray hairs, wearing a doctor's coat with a red and orange vest and a cane designed as syringe. This is the youthful heroine, Recovery Girl, Izuku Midoriya shouted as he fanned Gasmet over her. On the side, All Might and the man in the large brown overcoat rubbed their ears because of that shout. Recovery Girl, on the other hand, smiled at seeing the enthusiasm of the child. Behind him, two women came running when they heard him shout and looked at the arrival that was here. Damn it, Yagi. The man in large overcoat muttered, you should have told me that he could shout. Meanwhile, Inko and Mitsuki looked at the group that just arrived as Izuku started mumbling about the quirk of the old woman. I am sorry, Inko started as Izuku turned to look at his mother, but who are you? The question got the attention of all of them. Meanwhile, Mitsuki took note of the people that were there. One was a small, lanky man, who looked like he hasn't eaten in days or years with how his build was, wearing a shirt and pants. Other man was tall and was wearing a giant brown overcoat and black eyes. He had brown hat over his head. And the woman, well, she didn't need to, with how Izuku shouted out her name. So she was a hero, but something else was nagging her. Why did a hero come here, just after Izuku used his quirk on TV? Mitsuki thought as she looked over the three. Oh, I am sorry. The lanky man started as he looked at the three. Good afternoon. My name is Yagi Tashinori. I am All Might's secondary secretary agent for most of the things he requires. Now that got a reaction out of the two who gaped at the man who gave out a crooked grin. He used his other's identity reputation to make himself look more believable and not a crook out of the street, which he sometimes looks. The lanky man, for the two surprised woman and Izuku, Tashinori, turned his hand to point at the other man that was with them. This is Detective Naomasa Tsukauchi. Now that got narrowed eyes from the two, who glared at them. Yagi, noticing the glare, quickly decided to introduce the other person with them, and this, as you might have heard, is pro-hero recovery girl. That's all well and good. Mitsuki started as she looked at the group, but why are all of you guys here? On the side, Izuku facepalmed as he remembered one of the important things he forgot to tell his mother. We are actually here to discuss about young Midoriya here. The glare on the face of the two women darkened as they heard as Yagi and Nomesa quickly withered and started sweating under the intensity of the glare, which, judging by your glare, he did not told you about. Now the attention was on the teen who was looking at the ground. As the two of them looked at the kid, a few moments later. So let me get this straight. Mitsuki spoke as she looked at the son of her best friend as she turned to look at the other adults that just arrived. Izuku met All Might and the sludge villain before the villain escaped All Might again, for the first time as the sludge was trying to get hold of him the same way it did to my daughter Katsumi. Beside her, Inko tightened her fist on the apron that she was holding onto, and then he asked you if quirkless child like him could be hero, with All Might telling him not to lie about his quirk, because when the sludge attacked him, he activated his quirk for the first time. Yagi at his side nodded, but during the conversation the sludge villain escaped because of his slippery nature, quiet literally as All Might missed few pieces of it. So as All Might began to find the villain again, it attacked Katsumi, and the rest is what happened on the TV. Inko hand was trembling at her sides as she looks at her laps. Izuku quickly glanced at his mother, knowing she was going to cry all out once the whole story was done. Then All Might decided to find him again, as Izuku used his quirk in public without license, where he found out that the doctor lied to the Midoriyas about his quirk and that he activated it quiet later on accident. So you are here with the recovery girl, so that you could figure out more about his quirk and have it registered. Yagi nodded his head in confirmation. Meanwhile, Inko broke down sobbing hard as she hugged her son close. Izuku, Inko yelled out, as she, why did you not tell me about that? I actually forgot with what happened yesterday, and finding out that I had a quirk. Izuku replied from within her mother's embrace. Yagi and Naomesa watched the interaction and the amount of tears and bewilderment. Mitsuki and surprisingly recovery girl on the other hand were unaffected. As the crying began to get back in control, Mitsuki turned towards the small form of All Might again, not that she knew about it. Well, I could understand recovery girl, Mitsuki said as Inko turned to look towards the others, and Mitsuki turned to glare at the detective. But why the detective? Yes, him. Yagi turned to look at his friend whose expression turned serious, but gave the two women and Izuku a smile. If you don't mind, Yagi, Naomesa said as he moved a bit forward and turned to the three people as Yagi introduced me. My name is Naomesa Tsukauchi, and I am a detective in the police force. The two women straightened themselves, and I am not here to harm your son or arrest him, Mrs. Midoriya. They did loosened a bit, the glare was still present. I am actually here to investigate the case that Izuku has stated about the doctor. Now there was confusion in their eyes as the three looked at the detective. I am sorry, but what? Inko said as she looked at the detective. I mean, I am glad that you are not doing that or anything, but we haven't even decided to do anything about it. Not until Izuku learned more about his quirk, that is. It's nothing, Mrs. Midoriya. Nomesa spoke up. I can understand your concern and where you're coming from. And regarding the usage of quirk out there, even if he knew about his quirk, then there are protocols that has to be followed. Let me tell you about the quirk usage laws. As you know, there are several laws regarding the usage of quirk, and apart from hero license, there are other licenses too. The information surprised Izuku as he was much more interested in being a hero than anything else. He forgot to look over the other line of works. But both Mitsuki and Inko just nodded their heads in confirmation. Police gets their own license for the quirk use, but that is limited to police work only. They can't use quirk outside like heroes do. Similarly, mine workers gets their own licenses, but it is limited to only their work, and so on it goes for different jobs that is limited to the said jobs. Izuku soaked up this information once he heard it and wrote it down on the notebook that was by the couch. Now to the other set of the quirk, rules that relates to the illegal usage of the quirks. Naomesa said as the three other person looked at the detective with intrigue. A person that has used the quirk, if he used it for committing a crime like stealing or other things, gets the term criminal and a warrant is issued against them. Inko and Mitsuki kept their gaze on the detective as he said this, but if the quirk is used to provide help or has been activated because of an attack or defense or a panic attack, the person that has used the quirk is given a warning and a slap on the wrist telling a person not to do this again. Now this goes different for different people and how the quirk got activated or used. But we are discussing about Izuku here, so we will focus on his situation. He used it unknowingly, and as I said the first time, he only gets warning. If he does it second time, he will get another warning, and if said person is a minor, we send a report to their parents or guardian. Third time, we include heroes to make the point clear with institutions and the individual school being informed of the child with him having the threat of being expelled from the school, and fourth time, the person receives the title of a vigilante and a criminal, making us issue a warrant against that person. Doesn't matter if he is doing good, except for few. Many have been called vigilante and criminals. A few? Izuku asks. There are only 7 vigilantes who has been considered as true heroes by everyone, which include pro-heroes, police, government, civilians, and even villains, and the government is also ready to provide them with hero license and full immunity if they turn themselves in and get registered. But the fact is one of them is dead and has been for almost over 2 decades, or that is what the world believes happened to the vigilante Drago. At the mention of this vigilante, both Mitsuki and Inko stiffened, but both maintained their posture within a moment notice, which was noticed by both Recovery Girl and No Mesa. The other 6 are of radar. Mr. Tsukauchi. Inko spoke up as she looked at the detective. If you don't mind me asking, why are there so much rules regarding quirk usage? Oh, I don't mind, Mrs. Midoriya, and it's actually a good question. Tsukauchi stated most don't take these rules seriously, but the usage of quirks for vigilante purposes are looked down upon and considered illegal and has been for a long time. And as to why so many rules, well, this rule has been there for a long time, but it got its push and standing 10 years ago. The 3 gave the detective a confused expression. The 2 of you might remember the Hosu City Police Department fiasco. Both Mitsuki and Inko nodded their head as Izuku looked in on confusion. That was the reason that this rule got more standing and backing than it originally has. Both Mitsuki and Inko nodded their heads at that understanding about the rules. Okay, now that has been explained, Mitsuki said as she waves towards the detective with her hand, you still haven't explained why you are here now? Because Izuku has already been warned about not using his quirk in public. Yes, I was coming to that part. Namesa said as he looked at the 2 women as Izuku told All Might. He was told by the quirk specialist doctor that he did not have a quirk. Both Inko and Izuku nodded at that. Well, the thing is, you are not the only person that has been scammed by that doctor. Now that got the attention of the 2 Midoriyas and a pissed of Bakugo. What? The 3 of them shouted simultaneously. Yes. Nao Mesa stated as he brought out a file. I believe that he has been giving out these fake report and other complaints which has been overlooked by the officials of the hospital. But the thing is that recently a group of heroes found out an underground lab which has been used for experimentation with several people, well, more like bodies inside the lab. Now that got wide eyes from the 3 women. What does that has to do with him? Inko asks with worry remaining prominent over his face. The people that we found have one thing in common. They all had one same hospital and reports, and only one. There are several hospitals, but only one hospital, which is the Jaka General Hospital. Nomesa stated as he looked at residents of the house with grave expression. The founder of the hospital is a very well-known and respected among the general populace for his findings, research, and society work, which makes it difficult for us to work against him, but we wish that possibly, and hopefully Izuku's case, can help us look into the hospital. Nomesa looked at them as the room fell into silence. How can we help then? Mitsuki asked the 2 teen. Nomesa just gave a smile knowing that he had their attention and help. Right now I would like the reports that states Izuku is quirkless, and I will ask you few questions which you guys could answer. Nomesa said as Inko nodded his head and turned to look at her son. Izuku. Inko said to her son, who turned to look at her, get your reports from the hospital from the drawers, will you? She told her son, who nodded his head and went to find the said report. As he disappeared into the room, Inko turned to look at the detective after making sure Izuku was out of the earshot. Detective. Inko got the attention of the 3 people that were in the room. You said something about the lab. Are these people said to be quirkless? We don't know, Mrs. Midoriya. The detective told the Midoriya matriarch as he looked at her and her friend. I believe that they were looking for patients and other people to do experiments on. At hearing this, the faces of Inko and Mitsuki turned to that of disgust, and I believe that Izuku might have become one of them for that same thing. Now the disgust turned to horror in minutes. Yes, I believe that Izuku was one of the few people that they either forgot or overlooked, couldn't capture, or didn't need, because their quota was complete. Inko's hands flew to her mouth as Mitsuki's hands were turned to fists, digging her nails deep in her hands. So Izuku could have been Inko trailed of letting the question hang in the air. Your son is safe, Mrs. Midoriya, and we are here to help him, you and all the other people living in this city, and to keep all of you safe. Nomesa said, reassuring the woman. It is our job as the police to do that. Mitsuki muttered something under her breath, which was not heard by anyone else in the room, considering she got confused looks from most of the people in the room. Is something the matter? Mrs. Nomesa trailed of Bot, knowing the name of the probably only person that didn't cry in this house. Mitsuki Bakugo. Mitsuki stated in a casual manner as she got a little lax on her place. And you are here? Nomesa asks again. She is my best friend. Mitsuki spoke as she gave him a dead look, and her son saved my daughter yesterday. Now that was a news to the three. The girl that was taken hostage by the sludge villain was your daughter? Nomesa asks the woman again. Isn't that what I just said? Mitsuki said with a twitch in her eye, showing that she didn't got the tone in which he asked. Oh, I am sorry about yesterday, ma'am. Nomesa said again as he looked at the blonde woman, but she just waved him off. Relax. Mitsuki said as she looked at them. It wasn't your fault. A part of wants to blame All Might. But even he is a human. He could make mistakes. Yagi looked at the woman in surprise as this was the first time that someone had something like this. Otherwise they all would mostly focus on the fact he caught the villain. They tend to sometimes overlook his mistakes, which makes him drown in guilt, but if something must have happened, then the mistake might have cost more than anything. The lax look then turned vicious as she glared at the table, making holes in it, and All Might sweated from where he was sitting. But all of the people turned at once when they heard the steps, their heads turning towards the direction where Izuku was coming from. I found the reports, Mom. Izuku said as he walked back with reports in his hands. Izuku handed his mother the reports from the hospital. It was a very thick file with the X-ray attached in the file. Inko looked at the file, making sure it was complete, then handed it to the detective, who after checking once over grimaced at the lack of many things in the reports. Recovery girl is going to throw a fit. Nomesa thought with a grimace as he looked at the extra thin file. Is everything okay, Nomesa? Recovery girl asks the detective, who looked at the hero, then turned to the matriarch of the house. Is it all, Mrs. Midoriya? He asks her. Yes, these are all the reports. Inko answers, is there a problem? She asks with worried expression on her face. She then saw recovery girl take the reports from Nomesa and saw the expression turn quickly from a grimace to disgust to horror, and finally settled on rage. What is this? Recovery girl shouted as she looked over the file. This is a blasphemy to U.S. doctors. She was seething as she looked at the minor details that were in the file. Oh boy, was she pissed. Recovery girl turned to look at the woman and the son as she handed Yagi the reports, whose eyes then widened and eyebrows shot up towards his hairline within moment notice. No wonder she is losing it. Yagi thought as she looked at the report that has basically nothing. Who looked over the report which was there. He did told me that the doctor didn't do any test. I didn't actually thought that he did none. Mrs. Midoriya. Recovery girl calls out to the woman who was looking over the files. Is it actually all the reports? She asks the woman again. Yes. Inko answered firmly as she looked at the files that were in her hands again. Well, I found out that the doctor actually did not do any kind of test on your son, except the X-ray. Recovery girl stated as she looked at them both, and after reading the report, I am actually quite reluctant to believe that too. So with your permission, I would like to perform test on him to find out about his quirk. For that I would like him to come with us for a few moments. Inko looked reluctant to let him go right now, but looked at her son. She knew that he needed to know more about his quirk with the heroes, or without them doesn't matter. And it was better if he does it in the presence of the heroes and have help, than without them and possibly get injured and have no help at all. She nodded her head, giving recovery girl her permission. Okay then. Recovery girl said as she stood up. Yagi, and I will take your son with us, and we will be back by the evening. Meanwhile, the detective here is going to ask you few questions that you can answer for him. I hope that won't be a problem. Both Inko and Izuku blinked as Mitsuki just nodded her head. Young man, get your bag and the things you may need. We are going to find your quirk today. Inko watched as her son got his bag and followed the lanky man and recovery girl outside to find more about his quirk. Detective. Inko spoke up as she looked at the detective as she kept sitting on the couch. Was there nothing on the report that I gave you? She asks. Well, to tell you frankly, Mrs. Midoriya. Nomesa said as she looked at the woman and reading the report. what she said is very true. There are high chances that the reports for Izuku were either tampered with or the doctor on purpose neglected doing or performing any test on him. And with this fact only I could make a warrant to search hospital. But I would like to ask few more questions that could probably help us in the future. Well then, what are we waiting for? Mitsuki said as she slid near her friend to give her support if she break down in between the question, let's start, so that we could be done with it. Very well then. Nomesa said as he brought out few cards with the question that he wanted to ask. But Inko's mind was on something else entirely. Her son could have possibly been dead or a lab experiment. In that situation they got extremely lucky because they forgot about him. Her son who is right now going with All Might's secretary/agent and a pro-heroine learning about his quirk. She thanks the god for keeping her son all these years and pray for his safety in the future and hope that he won't land in any more trouble. Mustafa City Death Arms Agency. Izuku watched in fascination as he watched the giant building he was in front of. This is a hero agency. He watched in fascination as he looked around the building. From the outside the building didn't look like much. It was a normal 8-story skyscraper having the insignia of Death Arms and Kimui Woods on it. He right now had stars in his eyes. So we are going to test my quirk here? Izuku questions the number 1 hero. Yes, young Midoriya. All Might in his small form said as he looked at the building. I found out that Death Arms asked for Recovery Girl so that we could learn and find out about your quirk, and for that we are here. Or that's what he is supposed to tell him. He couldn't just say that. Nizu, the principal of U.A, did this when he received a call from him and told him that he were to escort Recovery Girl to the Death Arms Agency, and he took that chance for him to be there when they do the quirk test on him. Recovery Girl then took her cane and then went inside the building as Midoriya and Yagi followed behind her as they carried her bag and other things. As they entered the building, Izuku decided to ask one question that has been on his mind since he left his home. He asked many questions on his way here to the Recovery Girl and small form of the All Might, but one thing still was clinging on to the front of his mind. Mr. Tashinori. Izuku called out to the small form as he turned to look at the small form of All Might as both him and Recovery Girl turned to look at him. Why did the vigilante Drago and the other 6 considered as a true hero? Both Recovery Girl and All Might looked at him for a few moments as they tried to comprehend what he asked. Why the sudden interest in the vigilante's young Midoriya? Yagi asks as a smirk then passes over through his face as he spoke up in a sarcastic tone, I hope you now don't wish to become one of them. Wano never. Izuku spoke while shaking his head quickly in negative. I want to be a hero. It's just. Izuku took a pause for a moment as they went inside the elevator that will take them up to the desired floor on which they are supposed to be on. Detective Nomesa called them true heroes, but aren't vigilantes considered as the people that are even lower than the villains and criminals? He did have a point. The people hated the vigilantes more than anything else, even if there were those who stood up for them and those that criticized them for butting into the heroes' work, and then there were these that loathed vigilantes more than anything else. You are not wrong, young Midoriya. Yagi said as he turned to look in the front as the elevator closed. The vigilantes are termed as criminals or scams, and to some degree, even my friend Nomesa doesn't like them. But these 7 were different. How were they different? Well, for that we need to start from beginning. Yagi said as he faced Midoriya as both stood as they leaned on the side of the elevator with Recovery Girl stood in the middle, and for that I am not going to give you a brief introduction of Quirk and its history, but something else entirely. Around 30 years ago, a vigilante named the Nightmare appeared in Hosu. It was not a superhero name and certainly looked to be villain, and in beginning he was termed that with that title, but instead of doing crimes he began to stop them. Safe to say many didn't like that, which consisted of heroes, villains, the government, and police. He had been doing it for about 4 years when suddenly, in Kamino Ward, another vigilante appeared, this time by the name of Drago. Yagi just shook his head as if he remembered something. It was said that Drago was quite young when he became vigilante, and he took down the criminals and villains the same way as Nightmare did, and that's the only lead that we have ever gotten on this particular set of vigilantes, both that were then and those that are now. As such, many decided to capture them. Yagi then looked off to the side. One of them would have sufficed, but both were in totally different areas. As such, that lead went down. So several theories were made and traps were laid, and even heroes of that time got involved, and there were several close calls that were made against them. But every time, they managed to escape. Young Midoriya. Yagi turned to look at the teen who was listening to the story with his full attention. In the beginning, the two were considered as nothing more than just myths. Something that the police and civilians made up to keep the criminals on leash, and the traps and all the work police did was said to be nothing more than just publicity stunts. Till this day, many of these types of vigilantes, all except the Drago, are considered as myths, even after they watch them on the news. Yagi then looked up to space, remembering that particular news when he was in UA. I remember it when I watched the news. They nearly caught the Drago. He was trapped, but out of nowhere Nightmare came and saved him. 3 days later, one of the biggest crime syndicates in Japan was brought down because of them, and the only reason they got the somewhat of credit was because the heroes there didn't want to get the recognition of something they didn't even do, which made those heroes much more famous and get better ratings in society. But these two went completely off the grid. As they faded, the heroes got the recognition and fame. But after a few months, when everything settled down, they came back to protect their respective areas. But again, they faded into black and were nothing more than just myth. And with them, there comes several vigilantes, each protecting a specified area, but nobody knew who they were or where they came from, but were myths. And since then, many heroes gone up against these type of vigilantes. Heck, after the first 3 years of catching them, the attempt to catch them was nothing more than just ritual to try to catch the vigilantes. And it is till this day. But Drago and Nightmare, nobody have caught them or came even close of catching them. Not even All Might. Izuku asks him on the side. Recovery Girl snorted. Even Yagi couldn't. Midoriya. Recovery Girl said from her place as Izuku looked towards her in surprise. And yes, I know his secret, and that he has chosen you as his successor, so please don't let this old woman interrupt. Continue on, Yagi. She is right. Young Midoriya. All Might from his place called out. The wide eyes of disbelief turned from her to him. But you are All Might, Izuku cried out in disbelief. And I am still human, and I can still be defeated. Yagi said with a sigh. You know when I made my debut? Yeah, it was 22 years ago. Good, and you might know me. Along with Endeavor was people favorite in those times, the only two young heroes who gained instant popularity and could become top, and our rivalry to become number one added fuel to that fire. Izuku nodded his head to that. 2 years after that, Endeavor and I were in Hosu for patrol in different areas, when I suddenly came across the vigilante Drago, who was just caught a few criminals. Imagine my surprise that the vigilante being young was not a lie. You mean he was actually very young? Izuku asks the teen, and All Might just nodded his head in affirmation. Yes, in fact, he was even younger than me during that time. All Might told him to surprise. As I said, I came across him, and I decided to catch him, and it resulted in a fight which soon got the attention of Endeavor. I was sure that I could defeat him and capture him alone, but I was severely outclassed by him. Even after Endeavor joined me, we were unable to catch him and were defeated by him. This sentence got Izuku to gasp, and for Recovery Girl to snort. Defeat. Recovery Girl stated as she turned to look at the small figure of All Might. He humiliated you. I haven't seen that many injuries on a single person in my time. And there were 2 of you, both unconscious, as the said vigilante brought both of you to me in UA, which to this day, I don't know how he knew where I was. Wait, he knocked All Might and Endeavor out? Now that was surprise to Izuku. According to him and the rest of the world, All Might was someone who could never be defeated. Well, Izuku did see the injury, but even then and during that time, he didn't even have that injury. From what Drago himself told me. Recovery Girl started again as she looked at Izuku. Yagi knocked himself and Endeavor out. The only damage he did was break Endeavor legs, and even that was accidentally. Most of the damage they had were the one they inflicted themselves. What he did was trying to evade these two. Izuku looked at the heroine and his idol in various degree of surprise. But how? He finally asked. We were overconfident. Yagi admitted as he looked at the things he was carrying, and we severely underestimated him. We forgot that he had more experience than both of us, and that he was taking on both heroes and villains, and sometimes other vigilantes too, most of the time. But how come they have been able to elude the heroes and police for such a long time? They must have left some evidence. Izuku asks again. Yes, that All Might paused for a moment, thinking how to word that. Young Midoriya, you know how much is it easy for police to identify a criminal? Izuku nodded his head at that. Yes, it's easy because of the Quirk registry that only heroes and police could look into, and the reason that we have been unable to have any lead on them is because they've never used a quirk in all of their advents. Now that surprised the young teen. Wait, what? They never used a quirk, were they quirkless? Yes, we don't really know if they are quirkless or if their quirk is quite subtle, but from our point of view, they've never used a quirk, and there are no fingerprints, and the blood samples that have been taken over the years from the places of battles were always either compromised or have gotten lost. It was as if they never existed. So why were these 7 vigilantes considered true heroes? Izuku asks again. It's actually different for all of them. Recovery Girl stated as Izuku turns to look at her for Nightmare. It was because he saved several civilians and heroes from a psychopath with the ability to ignite, as he was about to blast a building that held over hundreds of hostage, which consisted of civilians, criminals, heroes, police, and himself. Yes, himself. Don't ask why that guy was loose in the head. Many have acknowledged that. For Drago, she took a deep breath as she looked in the front for him. It was when he saved heroes, villains, and civilians, and many other people, when the city was turned upside down, by defeating an underworld overlord from overseas threatening to nuke this city. Yes, he threatened to blast a nuclear bomb in the middle of the Mustafa city. He, along with Yagi and Endeavor, defeated criminals that were wanted in many countries, and the overlord was defeated by Drago himself. While he was taken in by the international police to be put under one of the best, maximum security prison in the world. Izuku heard it in fascination. He didn't know that there was someone who have saved that many people and never even took the credit. And in the end, what they did, they again faded in the background, making them nothing more than just a myth. Why didn't they take the offer of being considered as the heroes? Izuku asks again as the elevator doors opened and the 3 walked out of it towards a large gym with several equipments. He noticed the 3 heroes from yesterday, Mount Lady, Kimui Woods, and Death Arms were there. Well, Death Arms and Kimui Woods he could understand. This was their agency, but what was Mount Lady doing here? He noticed that 3 were now looking from where they were, their eyes glued to Recovery Girl and the 2 stick figure that were with her in their conversation. Nobody knows. Recovery Girl answered for Yagi as they both walked behind her carrying the things she needed. All that anybody really knows about them are that they are very elusive. They appear when they want to. They disappear without anybody ever finding where they have gone to. They also known for leaving a calling card or letter of sorts, and are known to be troublemakers, leaving for the police officers for writing the reports of the bust and the criminals they leave at their doors. Hello, Recovery Girl. Death Arms called out to the Recovery Girl, who greeted him back in return, and then turned towards Izuku. Hey kid, how are you? I am fine, and I apologize I am taking valuable time out of your schedule. Izuku apologized to the man. Don't worry about it. Death Arms spoke as he waved his arms, shaking off the apology. I noticed you were genuine when you told us about your problem, so I called you here. It's not your fault. He then turned to look at the man with lanky build. And you are? He asks him. I am Yagi Tashinori. Yagi said his civilian title as he brought forth his hand for him to shake. I am All Might's secretary agent. Now that shocked the 3 people in the room as Izuku and Recovery Girl watched. The 3 looked at the lanky man in surprise. Yo, you are All Might's secretary? Death Arms asks, and Yagi nodded his head. Seeing this reaction never gets old for him. So what is All Might's secretary doing here? He asks again. Oh yes. Young Midoriya here was approached by All Might after the incident. Now that surprised the other 3. They didn't know that the kid was approached by the number 1 hero. There he was inquired by him regarding his quirk, as it interested All Might seeing the quirk. But there we found out that the doctor that he went to as a kid to check his quirk lied to him and his parents and gave them a fake report. Now that got wide eyes from the other 3 as they turned to look at the kid, and he lived as a quirkless child till yesterday. Now the eyes were wide enough to come out of their sockets. They knew how quirkless people are treated in the society. Is that true? Kimui Woods asks as he turns to look at the kid and got a nod in return. You can check the reports if you want to. Recovery Girl said as she handed them the reports. All 3 of them looked at the teen and back at the reports. What is this? Mount Lady asks as she looked at the extra thin file. That's his report. Yagi said as he looked at them. This is his report. Kimui Woods said as he opened the file. It only has an X-ray. He looked at it in surprise. Oh, you poor soul. Mount Lady said as she looked at the teen. What would happen to the doctor now? An investigation is taking place as evidence is being collected by a friend of mine. Once it is done, we will be arresting the doctor. As he said this, the three heroes nodded their heads, and Recovery Girl went to set up the required equipments for the test. Mount Lady, meanwhile, had her thoughts on something else entirely, and as such she decided to ask the teen about it. "Hey kid," she called out to Izuku, who was busy looking at the equipments in fascination. "I overheard something when Recovery Girl was talking to you. What was that about?" "Oh, that," Izuku said as she looked at him. "We were talking about the vigilante nightmare and Drago," he said as she looked at the teen in confusion. Meanwhile, someone else entered the conversation. "You were talking about two of the elusive vigilantes." Kamui Woods asks the teen. "Elusive vigilantes?" Izuku asks the teen, and Mount Lady looked on in confusion. "Well, that's what we call the vigilantes of Hosu, Mustafu, Kamino wards, and many other places," Kamui Woods told the two. "Currently, they consist of Nightmare, Assassin, Elite, Dark Angle, Blackblade, and Black Spirit. Dargo once came in this group." "Yes, I know that the names are quite dark compared to many vigilantes." The two people looked at the pro in incredulity as he spoke those names. "These are the people that are considered as true heroes?" Izuku asks again, and this time even Mount Lady dropped her jaw. "They are considered true heroes with those names?" Mount Lady asks in exclamation. "Yeah, I know." Death Arms spoke up from his place. "They do have some dark names," completely missing the actual point she wanted to make. "But weren't these are considered as myths?" Mount Lady asks the others. "Oh, they are if you haven't met them," Death Arms said while nodding his head to the side. "What do you mean?" Mount Lady asked again. "Nobody knows who they are, or where they come from, or where they go to." Kamui Woods spoke up as Recovery Girl gave a once-over to the equipments that were there. "I haven't met those six, and it is said that meeting with Nightmare is nearly impossible, but I did met another one of these vigilantes who are a recluse, called himself Acre, again weird name. I tried to catch him, and well." Kamui Woods gave out a sigh. "Let me guess, they made an idiot out of you," Recovery Girl said as she came towards Izuku to tell him to get ready to give him a basic checkup. She brought out her stethoscope to check his heartbeat. He was being an idiot. Death Arms stated he didn't pay any attention to the objects he was holding, and he paid the price. "What was the vigilante holding?" Mount Lady asks. "A propane cylinder and a lighter," Death Arms said as Kamui Woods rubbed the back of his head on the side as Mount Lady gave him a deadpanned look. "Really? Really? Death Arms said it was quite amusing to watch him roll on the ground to put out the flames on his rear. "Seems like a good show." "Oh, it was. The vigilante even recorded to have a leverage over him for the next time they go at it." Death Arms he himself said that. "We can talk about them later," Recovery Girl said as she started jotting down the notes for the examination. "First, let's complete the quirk test." And with that, Izuku's test began. Recovery Girl also asked him several questions with the 4 pro standing on the side watching the examination. She did hit him on the head once or twice or many times whenever he went into his mumbling spree. She even made him run, eat, and drink, and took a blood sample. And then they finally reached a point where he had to use his quirk. "Now you are going to use your quirk for me to document it properly and give it a name," Recovery Girl said as she looked at Izuku with expectations. After when Izuku never said anything, she lost her patience. "What are you waiting for?" "An invitation. I said to use your quirk." Izuku on his place scrambled. "Oh, yes, ma'am," he shouted, and then stood there again. In one place, doing nothing, standing in his place, looking directly at Recovery Girl. She, on the other hand, gained a tick mark on her head. "I would certainly like it if you use it today," Recovery Girl said as she griped her own tightly. "Yes, ma'am. It's just." Izuku paused for a moment as others shifted a bit closer to hear what he was about to speak. "How does one use her quirk?" There was absolute silence once he asked that, and the others let the question sink in as if to understand what he was asking. They blinked a few times, and Mount Lady rubbed her ears to make sure she heard it correctly. Recovery Girl, on the other hand, was totally different news. "What do you mean by that?" Recovery Girl spoke. "You don't know how to use your quirk?" All turned to look at him expectantly. "Well, no," Izuku said sheepishly. "I mean, both of the times I used it, it was more because of the need than me actually activating it. So I don't actually know how to use it." The doctor rubbed her head at that. "Well, okay, try to concentrate on the feeling that you were feeling that time," Recovery Girl said as she clicked her hands. "Okay," Izuku said as he nodded his head and then closed his eyes. They again waited for a few minutes when nothing happened and opened his eyes. Nothing. Recovery Girl said as she looked over at the reports. "If I may suggest something." Yagi spoke up from his place as he looked over at Izuku. I remember an advice All Might told someone, so that they could use his quirk, or how he himself uses his quirk. Really? Both Izuku and Mount Lady spoke up. Recovery Girl, on the other hand, rubbed her face in exasperation. Aichin Yagi nodded his head. Want to hear it? Both nodded their heads with much ferocity. He said, when I use my quirk, I clench my butt hard and yell with everything I have, smash. Rest just gaped at his expression of All Might, which off in several ways, and mostly because of his build. Are you sure that is what he said? Death Arms asked hesitantly. Yes. Yagi answered confidently, and why wouldn't he? He was practically telling what he would have told him, in his alter ego form, that is. Well, if All Might said it. Izuku started as he looked at the others, then it must have been true, isn't it? He asked as he looked around. All he got was a shrug from the Mount Lady. Let's just try it and see if it works. And then he clenched his butt. He clenched it with all his strength. He put everything in it when he was clenching. His heart, soul, strength, or much as he could have had. But he put everything in clenching his butt. And it was visible on his face as other looked on, not knowing what to do. All seemed lost, and Izuku was about to give up when he heard the growling voice again. What are you doing? The growling voice asks, and Izuku jumped up in surprise and elation. It worked. Izuku said as others looked on, not noticing any difference. It worked. I could hear that voice again, he exclaimed, but cringed when the voice growled again. Don't test my patience, boy. The voice growled calmly. Tell me, what were you doing? Oh, nothing. I was just trying to find out how I could use you. On hindsight, Izuku should not have said this with wide grin on his face. He understood that when a large amount of pressure was built inside the building, which could even be felt outside. You wish to use me? Mongrel, the voice yelled out in anger, making Izuku jump up and fall. Nobody can use me. I am the legendary Kyubi no Yuko, a being whose one swipe of the tail can destroy mountains and bring tsunami with other. What is happening? Izuku thought as he looked at the gathered hero that were now on the floor. I need to get that voice to calm down. No, I did not mean it like that, Izuku shouted as he brought his hands up. The pressure lifted up a bit, but still it was not completely gone. Then what did you mean? This time, speak clearly and properly. The growling voice commanded. It's just we were trying to find out about my quirk. Izuku started as he looked at the room, and then it turns out that you are my quirk. Before he could continue, the voice interrupted him with a snort. I am not your quirk. The voice growled out, much to the surprise of Izuku. But it was you who gave me the ability to save her. Izuku said, remembering the previous day, noticing that the pressure over them was lifted off them as they now stood up, and Recovery Girl picked up the pen to note down something. I did not give you the ability. The voice growled out again. What I did was give you an extra boost to your already pathetic reserves. I am an aspect of your quirk, and I am alive as long as you are, and when you ran in there I had no choice but to give you an extra boost so that you don't die. But then what is my quirk? Izuku spoke up, hoping to find out more about the voice in his head. And how come you are just an aspect of my quirk? Your quirk is Chakra. The voice growled out. And the reason I am an aspect is because I am made of Chakra. My quirk is Chakra? Izuku asks again, and Recovery Girl noted it down quickly. And you are made of it? Do not repeat what I say, boy. The voice growled out in annoyance. Yes, it is Chakra. Izuku couldn't believe it. He knew since yesterday that he had a quirk, but now that it was finally named, he was very happy. He then looked towards Recovery Girl. Asked the voice, what does it do? She commanded, and Izuku nodded. Hello, excuse me. Izuku started, not knowing what to see the voice that was in his head, but when he heard a growl, he decided to ask away. I just wanted to ask what it is, and what does it do apart from the large pressure? There was a pause for a moment when the voice spoke again. Chakra is the combination of your spiritual and physical energy, which you could use to do many things. For one, you could increase your strength and speed. Then you could use it for other things, like walking on walls and water, and could use it to make techniques of your own. It's your energy. It all depends on how you use it. As the voice said it, Izuku's eyes widened to an extreme proportion in surprise. At seeing his surprise, Recover Girl urged him to repeat what he had been told by the voice. The pressure, on the other hand, is known as killing intent, or pressure, or presence. Again, it depends what you call it. As he repeated his, the gathered heroes, including All Might, widened their eyes, but not Recovery Girl. She just narrowed hers. How do I use Chakra? Izuku asks after he told by the small figure of All Might to ask that. Learn it. The voice simply stated. Izuku looked surprised at that comment. Will you teach me? Izuku asks. There was a pause for a moment. No. The voice answered, and Izuku fell down to the surprise of others, at how nonchalantly it was told by the voice. What? Izuku shouted as he stood back up. But why not? He yelled out. Because I don't feel like training a runt. The voice growled out and Izuku looked ready to argue again, but I am not heartless. Tell you what, I will lay a challenge for you. If you are able to release your chakra, without my help, I will teach you one technique to help you out. Izuku looked surprised, but then he steeled his expression. Okay then, I will do that, and you will teach me. Izuku agreed to the challenge, and then he noticed that Recovery Girl was calling him. Ask him what would happen if you would overuse your quirk. Recover Girl asked with a keen light in her eyes, as if she knew something. And Izuku repeated the question to the voice. And while he wasn't expecting the answer he received, "You will die?" the voice said, and it said it in such a tone as if it was talking about weather. Izuku, on the other hand, choked on his breath. What? Izuku yelled, making others cringe a bit at the loud voice in which he yelled. What do you mean I will die? This made the others widen their eyes at that, whereas Recovery Girl nodded her head at that, as if she hoping that would be her answers. No need to yell. The voice growled out, threatening the child. You might have heard, I said it is the combination of physical and spiritual energy. Izuku nodded his head at that. Those are you life energies, basically something you or any other human use to live. When you are using chakra, you are using your life energy as your source. Overusing chakra will lead to chakra exhaustion, which could result in your coma, and you will be out for quite a time. And during that period, if you are unable to get your chakra enough for you to live, then you would eventually end up dying. So remember to use it efficiently. I want to live for a bit longer as of now. The voice paused for a moment as Izuku comprehended what exactly the limitations of his quirk. I am going to rest. Don't disturb my sleep right now. And with that the voice went away, leaving others in shock of the limits and consequences of his quirk. Young Midoriya, Yagi called out, getting Izuku out of his shock. What did you mean by you will die? He asked the question that was on the mind of the other three heroes, but before Izuku could answer, Recovery Girl answered for him. It's exactly as he said, Toshinori. Recovery Girl said as all the attention turned to her, including Izuku, and after seeing his attention, she decided to explain herself. Let me guess what the voice told you. Your quirk is actually the life energies that you a person use to live. Overusing them would lead for you being unconscious and coma, and that is best case scenario. Worst case scenario, your body is unable to recover enough energy or chakra to sustain you, leading to your death. Her accurate answer stunned Izuku. How did you? He left the rest unsaid, but Recovery Girl understood what he was asking. Because you aren't the only one that had this type of quirk. Recovery Girl stated as she closed her file. I know a few people that had a quirk which is very similar to yours. So, this was the end of part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.